Welcome to the webinar for the European Reference Network, Infrastructure for Research Partnership, the why and the when. My name is Sheela Upadhyaya and I'm your moderator for the webinar today. I'm honoured also to be chair for Together for Rare Diseases, which is an initiative that is fostering and supporting collaboration between European reference networks and the industry. ERKA, as you know, is the European Rare Disease Research Coordination and Support Action Consortium, and it unites 24 European reference networks to create a cohesive platform to integrate research and innovation capacity. The goals of ERKA are developing competitive intra and inter-ERN networks, implementing effective data and collection strategies, improving patient involvement, enhancing the quality and impact of clinical trials, and raising awareness of ERN's innovation portal and potential. The goals are really pursued through knowledge sharing, stakeholder engagement, and transdisciplinary research collaboration across the global health spectrum. I'm delighted to be joined by three eminent speakers this afternoon. Professor Alberto Pereira, who is the coordinator of the European Reference Network for Rare Endocrine Conditions, Endo-ERN. Professor Dr. Franz Schaefer, coordinator of the European Rare Kidney Disease Reference Network, ERKNet. And Katarzyna Mosiewicz, who is the Global Patient Journey Senior Manager, Global Medical Affairs of Rare Renal Disorders at Novo Nordisk. I would like to start this webinar with an introduction from Professor Pereira to talk to you through what ERNs are all about and what they have in terms of strengths and all of the activities that are undertaken within that ERNs. Professor Pereira, may I hand over to you? I know you're struggling with your camera and we're trying to sort that out, but it would be great to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sheela, and sorry that you can't see me here. As you all know, there are 24 ERNs that have been officially installed already by the European Commission in 2017 under the EU Health Programme, which all ERNs covering specific rare disease domains and altogether the entire rare disease landscapes. And the ERNs, well, they're not virtual networks, they are real networks now that connect healthcare providers that function as reference centers with specific expertise across Europe. And as such, the ERNs can tackle rare and complex conditions that require highly specialized treatment and concentrate expertise. The mission of all the ERNs is to reduce and ultimately abolish present health inequalities that are still present in Europe. And they are established under the 2011 Directive on Patients' Rights in Cross-Border Healthcare, with the aim to shorten diagnostic delay and enable treatments of high-quality healthcare for patients with rare and complex conditions. As said, each ERN focuses on a specific medical domain, bringing together multidisciplinary teams to share knowledge and conduct research and to develop clinical guidelines. And by pooling the resource and expertise, they enhance the quality of care for our patients. The key deliverables of the ERNs are, first of all, to demonstrate the added value of a so-called virtual multidisciplinary expert board using a telemedicine tool, which we call CPMS, to prevent massive and unnecessary physical cross-border traveling when it's not necessary. Second is the standardization of rare disease care using transparency, guideline development, and patient involvement, leading ultimately to ERN clinical guidelines and position statements. And last but not least, to demonstrate structural pathways into science. So through collaborative efforts, the ERNs as such can address the challenges that are posed by the scarcity and fragmentation of the expertise that we encounter in Europe. So I hope that this has provided the correct background and reference for now.
Thank you so much, Professor Pereira. And I wonder if I might ask you to expand a little bit about some of the databases and registries and other activities that some of the ERNs are undertaking, and the opportunities that this brings to partners in industry to collaborate with ERNs.
Yes, well, as said, so these healthcare providers that function as reference centers, so they see the patients. So the centers, they not only collect the data, but I would like to accentuate that they have the patients and they have the expertise and the infrastructure to translate the problems of the patients into scientific research questions. Well, as an example, so all the ERNs now have their ERN registry, which means that data are collected not only of existing patients, but it also enables epidemiological surveillance of new encounters. Collection of these data in a registry enables to link care to research, with the registries functioning as a platform for this linkage. For example, in our network of the rare endocrine conditions, we see over 20,000 new encounters per year, and we take care of several hundred thousands of patients with rare endocrine conditions. And now that the networks are maturing and the registries are maturing, an increasing number of patients are also, their data are also collected in these ERN registries. Perhaps Professor Schaefer wants to continue. So the registries are one tool, but there are more tools that enable us to link the clinical observations to research and research questions and to unmet needs.
Thanks so much, Professor Pereira. Professor Schaefer, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think the registries are certainly crucial in linking the ERNs to clinical research and providing a basis for clinical research activities. So all 24 ERNs now have their registries set up and established, and I think we have somewhere between 60 and 80,000 rare disease patients now in these registries. We already are starting to use the registries to provide information and support for clinical research programs, not only academic programs, but also industry-driven drug development programs. For instance, in our ERN, in our registry, we can easily identify patients that fit with the eligibility criteria for certain clinical trials and identify them and link contacts between the local investigators and interested commercial researchers. We can also provide real-world evidence with these longitudinal registries, and most of us are collecting both retrospective and prospective data, especially prospective data, including treatment information. And here we have basically cohorts that provide standard of care information, real-world information on these patients that can be used not only for demographic purposes, but also as external controls for clinical trials. This is now increasingly being used. Of course, there are some issues that we have to overcome. We are usually not collecting data in very great detail, but if there's an interest by partners, by research partners, we can always expand the data collection and acquire more comprehensive and more granular data from these patients, most of whom are under current care. On top of this registry work that we are now increasingly maturing and diversifying. Several ERNs have also started to collect tissue specimens and biospecimens from their patients in large biobanks. An example is the ERN NeuroNMD for neuromuscular diseases, where biopsy materials, but also DNA for genetic studies have been collected in a large number of patients. And that seems to be very useful for innovative clinical research. So we can do this, we can use these specimens for biomarker studies and for extended diagnostic studies. In addition to being a partner in clinical research, for instance, with pharma companies, several ERNs also have established their academic clinical trial networks within the ERNs. The most notable example, perhaps, is the ERN PETCAN, which is focused on pediatric cancers, that has developed a network that enables fast patient enrollment in their hematological and oncological clinical trials across Europe. What else do the ERNs provide? We develop standardized guidelines, clinical practice guidelines, but also certain procedural protocols in the ERNs that are also very useful for clinical research. We can benchmark our performance according to the guidelines that we are setting up. We are harmonizing our procedures and our clinical management. And in this way, we set standards of care that can be used in clinical trial programs as a reference standard. And finally, maybe we also are very active as ERNs in training and education of junior specialists in rare diseases in our specific domains. And there we also have educational resources like webinars that provide the latest updates on research innovations in rare diseases. And we also have e-learning tools for our members where they can learn how to apply the latest standard of care and research in their daily practice. These may be the most important aspects of the ERN's research affiliations.
Thanks so much, Professor Schaefer. And it seems to me that there's such a wide range of experience and knowledge within the ERNs in all of the areas that you've described around the guideline and protocol development, the registries, which have got fantastic opportunities for research to be undertaken, given all of the activities that are going on in that space. The ability to diagnose and identify patients early so they can enter into clinical trials and be part of that wider research agenda. And of course, importantly, educating and training new clinicians to be interested in this area so the research can continue is all really valuable. And I'm sure the industry would be really interested to understand how they could connect with you. So given that you talked about that collaboration with industry and how it can be worked together in order to kind of improve the landscape for research with the ERNs, I wonder if I could ask you to talk a little bit about the Rhine project. You've been partnering with Novo Nordisk on a project, and I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit about the current unmet needs in renal research and how this project came about. And then Cassia, I might ask you to talk a little bit about your experience. Thanks, Professor Schaefer.
Well, the Rhine project, yes, was actually started based on an initiative of the Together for Rare Disease project. Thank you for that. So you made contacts between our ERN and a company, Novo Nordisk in this case, but also another association and registry for a rare kidney disease that already existed before the ERNs were put into place. That's Oxal Europe, the registry for primary hyperoxaluria type 1, for which there are now new treatments, microRNAs, available that really transform the prognosis of this hitherto very dismal disorder. And yeah, we thought maybe we can do something together between our ERN, an industry company, and another established specialist consortium to optimize the state of knowledge regarding this ultra-rare disease. We came together, we worked out a concept how we could do something together, and eventually this became quite a nice and proliferative project. Maybe I can ask our colleague Kasia to outline a little bit more the project.
Thank you, Professor Schaefer. And yes, it's been a great pleasure to be introduced to such an initiative by Together for Rare Disease and being introduced here to ERKNet and brought this proposal forward, which was accepted. As you have mentioned before, one of the important pillars of ERN's mission is to enhance patient registries for improved clinical care. And that's exactly what RHINE is about, RHINE project. We want to harmonize as Professor Schaefer mentioned, the two data sets, ERKNet registry with more disease-specific registry, Oxal Europe. And by producing a model, a platform, we are very interested here. Also, Novo Nordisk is very interested to study, to build evidence-based patient journeys. We are very interested in addressing delayed diagnosis, which is critical in such an ultra-rare disease as primary hyperoxaluria. And we aiming here to first identify the pain points, to understand the pain points in the diagnostic pathway, and then co-create together, jointly with partners, tools and solutions that can address those gaps. So thanks to the initiative of Together for Rare Diseases, we actually have, the first achievement was to have the two registry owners at the same table. This was with our kickoff meeting in Heidelberg in Germany last year, where actually it was where the idea of RHINE was conceived, was inspired by the river flows through Germany to Netherlands, where Oxal Europe registry is based. So that's a little bit of the background. And then after 1 year of really dedicated effort and multiple iterations, we have successfully united all the partners through a collaborative partnership, culminating in a formal agreement. And now, after a few months after, we are really happy to say that we have already first preliminary analysis outcomes and a very solid plan to move forward with the registry harmonization. So as we look to the future, and as I mentioned before, our interest is in facilitating earlier diagnosis and enhancing pathway to care. And this is our joint mission also for Novo Nordisk. So it's the commitment that goes beyond drug development, but it's a holistic approach that Novo Nordisk embraced, and I think also other companies in rare diseases space, because it's a must. So we cannot achieve it alone. we need a strong, robust, collaborative framework. And we see here ERN, and here especially we have seen ERKNet as a critical, crucial partner, actually a key player that unites different expertise and serves as a collaborative hub. So Franz, back to you.
Yes, so we decided to kind of join or merge our registries. So the large existing one of the Oxford-Europe Consortium with our younger one, the new one of ERKREC. Of course, that was a little bit of a challenge initially. First of all, we had to build trust between the partners, both the academic partners and industry. But we agreed on common goals and a common mission that we all committed to. And I think that was actually quite a nice experience eventually. And then once we had committed to collaborate, the next and more difficult challenge perhaps was to find the right format for the collaboration in terms of agreements. So here there are 3 parties that work together, and we had to develop an appropriate legal framework for that, with which all 3 institutions, the legal departments of all institutions, were agreeing to. So that took quite a lot of time. That took actually most of the time since we started the project. But now we have this in place, and everybody is happy with that. And now we are working on the technical integration of the registries. We are exchanging data. We are starting, of course, with mapping the data dictionaries, see what we have together and what we have only in one of the 2 registries available. And then we decide on the endpoints, what we really would like to study. And according to this, we prioritize which items we would like to merge and to analyze. And what is missing will have to be collected from patients who were enrolled in our registry, for instance, within the last 5 years. So that is a kind of additional task that we have to fulfill, but it's possible, it's doable, and it's being done. We also had, of course, to identify the duplicates, patients that were present in both registries, enrolled in both registries. But that was relatively easy to do because we knew the centers, we knew the birth dates, so we could identify those patients. Yeah, so now that we have overcome these issues, we are busily analyzing the data and yeah, performing the statistical workup. Another challenge that I might mention, or not challenge, but it's more of an opportunity, is to really include also the patients in this venture. So we have the nice situation in the ERNs that we have what we call EPACs, the European Patient Advocacy Groups. Within each ERN, there are these patient advocates that work together. They are specialists for their own disease, and we have groups of specialists for the different diseases. And so we can incorporate their views, their opinions, their needs in developing the project proposal and the protocols in a way that we maybe did not in the past before we had the ERNs. So that is actually quite a nice asset that we now can include the patient's voice in all these research activities.
Thanks so much, Professor Schaefer. And it really demonstrates that actually having such a range of information available within the ERNs can be utilized in many different ways. The fact that you've been able to create that bridge between yourselves and Oxford Europe, understand a wider patient pathway, and manage the duplications, and consider what new data could be collected or gaps in the data collection that could be addressed. And Kasia, you talked a little bit about what you bring as industry in terms of your knowledge and experience. And actually, this is more about the pre-competitive space. You are not looking to think about a particular treatment or a particular therapy area. It's how can you support the system to improve the understanding of this condition and the diagnosis pathway, and really help develop a better, clearer picture of how this works. So I wonder if I might ask you, either Professor Schaefer or Professor Pereira, a question that's come into our chats about how we think that data collected in the European reference networks can be applied to potentially new indications or label updates when a drug is being reviewed by the EMA. I don't know which one of you would like to answer. Professor Pereira, may I ask you first, and then Professor Schaefer, I might come to you.
Yes. Well, we have a concrete example in our own networks, and in specific, in ultra rare conditions, I would say, so conditions that are only present in a limited number of patients per country. These international networks can provide the framework to recruit a meaningful number of patients to perform the required clinical trials. And within Endo-ERN, we have done a clinical trial that led to EMA approval for a triac, which is a medication which can be used for the treatment of a very rare thyroid condition, which is called MCTH deficiency. And now all the documents for review for EMA approval are there. And another example is the use of the clinical trial network for repurposing of existing drugs. So that we also had an example where we were able to do a required placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial with an activin A blocking antibody, which now proved to be helpfully treating patients with an ultra-rare bone condition. So again, the framework of having an international network that is able to recruit meaningful number of patients with ultra-rare conditions, I think it's really a unique setting that fulfills a great unmet need.
Thanks so much, Professor Pereira. Professor Schaefer, just coming back to this potential, I mean, Professor Pereira has talked about the fact that, you know, being able to identify the patients, being able to collect the data within a multitude of centres across Europe is an amazing achievement, particularly for the ultra rare. But if a company were thinking about a label update or a new drug, how do you feel that the ERNs could support collecting data and bringing evidence into that conversation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you would think of how large is the population. So you would need demographic data. Some of the published demographic data are not very accurate or outdated. So what we routinely do now in our network is to launch surveys on particular diseases amongst our members, and this is very effective. Within a very short period of time, you get information about how many patients really are treated within our 100 specialized units. And we know the total number of patients they are seeing. We know their catchment areas, so we can provide quite good information about demographics of disease. And then, finding patients through the registries is also something that we are now doing on a routine basis, providing information regarding the natural history of the patients, the standard of care treatments, is useful to some investigators. And when it comes to the post-marketing management, then we can also, we have some what we call sub-registries now in our registry, where we collect more detailed, more granular information, including medication, side effects, and so on, adverse events, hospitalization events, etc. And we are moving gradually toward building structures that can be used for PAS studies, for post-marketing surveillance studies within our registry. So that is another field where we are looking into possibilities for collaboration.
Fantastic. And that, for me, could be hugely valuable to industry, who are often asked to undertake these activities and then will set up their own registries. Well, actually, if you've already got a fantastic platform in which to build that data from, then you're also giving a continuous journey for that patient throughout the whole registry and building a much more complete picture for yourselves as clinicians to develop more guidelines and management strategies, but also for industry to undertake more research into new therapies and treatment. So that brings me on to kind of the next question that I've been asked. So maybe Professor Schaefer, I might start with you on this one. Given that the ERNs are starting to and have developed a number of registries, we accept that ERNs are at different stages of development in their registries, it would be fair to say. But one of the things we've been asked by one of our attendees is, how do we manage, or can you elaborate on the data interoperability? And you've got a great example in Rhine in how you've done that. But do you know a little bit about how the other registries are or not interoperable in terms of data exchange and transfer?
Well, yes, of course, we have invested a great deal in ERICA into making the registries fair. And the I in FAIR stands for interoperability. So we have indeed looked at that in some detail, and we have invested in developing APIs that allow to explore data or to find data across different databases. For that, we have developed what we call the virtual platform, which was a part of an activity of the European Joint Program on Rare Diseases, and is now taken over by the ERDERA project. So there you can actually screen for patients with a certain offer code, with a certain diagnostic code across the different ERN registries. That is something which is still in emergence, but we are trying to establish that and integrate eventually all ERN registries in this platform to ensure the findability of patients with certain diagnoses across the registries. Data export from the registry is not so difficult. What is difficult really is if you have different databases that use differently formatted items. So if you have non-compatible data items that basically are exploring the same thing, but they are formatted in different ways. So that's a little bit of a challenge sometimes. Here we are trying to map the data dictionaries of the registries against common standards. So the OMOP format is something that we have looked into and have mapped several ERN registries now to, and that will help the interoperability quite a lot, I think, if we can translate our private data formats into a generalizable one. And so in this way, we hope that the interoperability will be facilitated.
Thanks so much, Professor Schaefer. Cassia, maybe I could ask you from your industry perspective and the experience of working in the Rhine project, why do you think ERNs are a great place to collaborate for industry? What have you learned in your journey in this collaboration that other industry partners who are listening to this webinar could learn from? And what are the opportunities? Because ERNs for me are an amazing foundation for research to be undertaken. So I wonder if you might share your experience with colleagues on the call.
Absolutely, and thank you for your question. I can't be more fond of ERKNet and here representing ERNs. Perhaps it's also because the initiative from Together for Rare Disease, we started really in terms of partnering. We actually departed here from a more traditional way of working, like grant or donation, sponsorship way of working, to more partnership. And ERKNet was very open to that. It was open to work hand in hand with us and invite another stakeholder. So from that perspective, I think this is really like a game changer, starting to be also for industry, how to work, how to approach. And especially here, ERKNet represents this diversity of expertise, as I mentioned. So it's like a linchpin uniting different skills, but also different partners to work together.
Thanks so much, Cassia. You're absolutely right. I think my experience of observing not just this pilot, but the other pilots and Together for Rare has really shown that everybody brings different knowledge and different skills and expertise to the conversation. And if we can partner and create a different way of working together, then actually we can achieve a lot. I think there's real opportunity as well, in my experience, to explore the work in the ERNs that are less mature in their thinking or may have not developed as progressive activity as Professor Schaefer and ERKNet have in terms of some of the research activities that they're undertaking. I've got a couple of questions that I would like to again pose to the panel. Professor Pereira and maybe Professor Schaefer as well, what would be the appetite for a collaboration with a US medical school who has a rare disease department? And I know one of the objectives of Europe in general, particularly around the Commission and ERNs, is to provide a situation where Europe is a great landscape for research. So maybe Professor Pereira, would you be open? Do you think ERNs would be open to collaborating with a US medical school?
I think the ERNs would certainly be open to do this. So the ERNs they are a European initiative, but from the research perspective, they're not exclusively for Europe. Also, the ERDERA has more than 170 partners globally, and under the ERDERA, there will be developed a European clinical research network that again will be open for the ERNs, but not exclusively the ERNs. So yes, and in the example of the phase 2 clinical trial using a drug repurposing for ultra-rare bone conditions, which was also facilitated by our network. We also collaborated with US partners. So I think it's an extra framework and opportunity, a European model, but serving hopefully the entire world. Like the US has its NIH research network, and the Canadians now have a pediatric clinical research network. I think we should be open for all initiatives.
Thanks so much, Professor Pereira. Professor Schaefer, in 1 minute, what is the Clinical Research Network, and do you know when it will be launched by ERKNet?
Well, the Clinical Research Network of ERKNet is basically a network, a consortium that focuses both on diagnostic and on therapeutic research. We have several work packages where structured diagnostic pipeline for mostly genetic diseases will be installed Europe-wide. And then we have a part where we are focusing on outcomes research and real-world data, where we will combine data from different sources into augmented cohorts, patient cohorts with certain diseases. This is more paradigmatic, so we are building models how to best do that. Also, we will develop analytical tools for rare disease trials. So how can we best approach rare and especially ultra-rare diseases? So that's all under the header of clinical trial readiness. And then we have a therapeutic part in the research network. One will develop calls, competitive calls actually, for academic-driven clinical trials in rare diseases. And then we have another branch that focuses on ATMPs, advanced therapeutic medical products. And indeed, we will start that program with a kind of multi-stakeholder study where we will try to find out for which rare diseases there is the greatest medical need to have ATMPs developed. And this will be a multi-stakeholder approach, integrating opinions of expert clinicians from the ERNs, patient organizations, industry, regulators, and we will try to find a system by which we can prioritize the most suitable groups of rare diseases for innovative research in this field.
Thanks so much, Professor Schaefer. That kind of answers one of the questions in our chats around the governance model for which rare diseases to study, particularly in the ultra-rare. So hopefully some of the work that the Clinical Research Network is doing will help crystallize and understand which ones we might want to prioritize. Needless to say, all rare diseases are really important, but where there's the greatest unmet medical need, if we could find ways to collaborate and build more research in those areas, then hopefully we could make a real impact. So I wonder if I could maybe just ask one or two more questions before we close. Do we have any idea of what kinds of collaborations ERNs would be open to? Katia, I might bring you in first in this question in terms of you've talked about the RHYME project, but if you were to take yourself away from that and just put your general industry kind of hat on, what kinds of things do you think industry would want to collaborate on with ERNs? And then maybe Professor Pereira and Professor Schaefer, you could say what you think ERNs would be open to collaborate on.
Thank you, Sheela. So maybe here I'm a little bit biased by working in the very super ultra rare disease. For me, some of the aspects, of course, patient registries, to have a robust platform to understand this is something that pharmaceutical companies are very, very interested. But then, as well as also what Professor Schaefer mentioned, ERNs has also have the skills of bringing patient voice, patient perspective, and that's not necessarily that easy for industry to execute on. So that's another skills that we would definitely tap into. And then maybe also the final is that we are always creating some tools to improve diagnostics, improve awareness. And if we do it by ourselves, like industry, I feel that we will actually benefit much more. It will be much more impactful if we are working together with ERNs to do that. So to co-create initiatives and solutions. I think there must be much more, but I think I will stop here.
Thank you. Professor Schaefer, you've been running ERKNet for a long time, but there are other ERNs that maybe aren't as mature as you in their research capacity. I personally think that's a great opportunity for them to partner with industry to build some of these structures that you have in yours. Would you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first couple of years of the ERN's existence were really a building phase, where we had to establish ourselves and find the ways to collaborate and find our mission, what we really want to achieve. This has now pretty much matured, and now the ERNs are actually increasingly looking out for partners for innovative research. And I think whatever field you're working in, you can find an ERN that may be very open to collaborate in various ways. And I think we have now discussed all these different approaches. And as far as I know, my colleagues, they're all very open to these kind of collaborations. And now we also have the tools. We know about the legal requirements. We have largely solved most of these problems, and now we can embark in collaborations.
Thanks so much. I'm conscious that I've maybe gone over time by a minute or two, so apologies for my poor moderation on this part, but it was an extremely interesting discussion and I didn't want to not allow people's questions. So just very quickly in summary, I think what Professor Schaefer says is perfect. ERNs are in a really strong position now. They have worked through a lot of the initial kind of setup and framing challenges, and they are open for business. Industry should be looking at opportunities to partner with them on many, many different things, particularly in the pre-competitive space, in really understanding natural history, disease progression, supporting the diagnosis piece. And collaborating with them is going to be hugely beneficial for both industry and for patients with rare diseases and improving the landscape in the research arena. I would really like to take this moment just to thank all of my panelists for participating in the webinar this afternoon. It's been a fantastic opportunity to share what ERNs can offer the industry, and I hope the industry will now look to ERNs for collaborations going forward. Thank you so much for all of your time.
Sure.
Thank you, Sheela.